why would you support research in China that had a potential biowarfare, biological warfare angle to it? That kind of doesn't make sense. It sounds like there's more to the story. So our next question is, could the novel COVID virus have resulted from gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute? Very specific question. Given the likelihood, the type of research they were conducting, the use of bats and level of biosecurity. These are the things the NIH should have considered prior to funding. And one would wonder why a Western laboratory might not have had a better security level, might have been a better bet for the research. So they ask questions here. So, considering the type of research, they were at Wuhan, they were conducting research on coronavirus, especially those in bats, and it seems to have come from bats, so there is a potential link here. Use of bats. Bats are natural reservoirs, and there are a huge amount of bats out there. They mainly live during the night and sleep during the day. We're not really aware of that. These are mammals that are ideal for viral research. It has to be controlled properly. And so the Wuhan Institute had really been using bats and doing coronaviruses. So there's a clear link there. The biosecurity was at a level technically, but there were concerns raised about the biosecurity practices, a possibility of leakage. Employee infections, the employees could have become infected and then transmitted, potentially through the wet market or going back to their homes, other community settings. The lab itself could have released accidentally these viruses. Intentional release, the conspiracy theorists, and I think there's a reasonable suspicion. Always one has to be on guard for this kind of intentional release. Could they have been working on a virus? Were they intending to release it in a different area? So what the consensus seems to be is that the most likely scenario is a natural origin, with the virus being transmitted from an animal host to humans. WHO and CDC have also gone along with that. Of course, Fauci has direct links with the CDC, so that might be a conflict of interest when it comes to making that assessment. But looking at the consensus generally amongst scientists, that there is a possibility of a laboratory origin. However, the general consensus that the lab origin leak story is extremely low. The likelihood is extremely low. But it's up there. We need to get our act together, whatever one thinks about this. Regulations, surveillance, almost at the level of that atomic agencies do for nuclear research and for assessing the global nuclear facilities and advances. We need that level of security. I think that's kind of the bottom line. So just to finish up, what was the cost of the COVID epidemic? Profound impact. Looking just at 2020. Looking maybe at the financial side first, 3.3% decline in global GDP just to this. It's quite a massive impact. Pushing an additional 120 million people into extreme poverty, but these are obviously probable underestimates. The lockdowns also led to widespread job losses, probably about 114 million jobs globally, but again, probable underestimate. Global trade declined by almost 10%. Um, so global estimates is obviously just approximate, but to give a ballpark, $2.5 trillion in 2020 alone. And of that, $1.2 trillion in the tourism and hospitality industries. Small and medium enterprises affected. Obviously, when governments step in with their stimulus packages, inflation comes about and there's an economic impact from that secondary to these effects. So the stimulus packages were about $11 trillion from the G20. Obviously, they were important to stabilize the financial system, but increased debt, long-term economic risks, these are still things that we have to deal with up to today. There has been some signs of recovery, some better than others, obviously variable. What's interesting is the pandemic shifted some trends, like the shift to remote work and the growth of e-commerce and even e-tourism and artistic work. A whole lot of our lives moved on to online science, turning a bit to human lives. They estimate 750 million cases and over about 7 million deaths reported worldwide. The true number is probably higher. Increased rates of depression, anxiety, social isolation, suicide rates have all gone up, and I think a lot of these may not have recovered, but we will be able to assess these better over time as the research into rates of change of these levels and conditions come through. Okay, so looking at that's a nice summary of the. So estimated global economic loss 2.5 trillion, but the amount of money printing up to 11 trillion. So you can add that to this because we'll pay the price with inflation after money printing. Additional people into poverty, 120 million. Job loss, about 114 million. Increase in depression and anxiety. WHO estimates 25% overall increase in rate. Okay, thank you for your attention, and that was the end of the talk.